Success International Language Services.
The verb would in English can be used in many different ways. For example, polite. Would you like some coffee? Or unreal conditional. If I were rich, I would travel around the world. But today's video will give you a new way to use would in the past, which will make you sound very much like a native speaker. Hello everyone, this is Michael from Success. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a more complicated way to talk about the past. Before you watch this video, please be sure that you watched our video about past simple, okay? Because today we're going to explain a more complex concept of talking about the past. Many intermediate or more advanced students know that we can use the word would in English to talk about two different situations. One is polite. Would you like some coffee? Or would you like to read my newspaper? Polite, offering something. Another way of using would be something more complex, a situation which is not real. For example, I'm not rich and I can't travel around the world. But if I were rich, I would travel around the world. Okay? So this is quite commonly known by more intermediate or advanced students. But I'm going to talk about a different way of using would today, which many students may not know. The same word, but used in a completely different way, not as an unreal situation, and not as being polite, as using it for the past, but not a single past event. For example, let's compare. Yesterday, Frank drank coffee with his family. He drank coffee. Past simple, one event. Okay? But let's compare that to would and the verb drink. Now, as is typical of English, when you use an auxiliary verb or a helping verb like would, can, should, may, might before the verb, that means you do not conjugate the principal verb. So here we conjugated it with past simple. Frank drank coffee yesterday. Drink, drank, right? But if we use would, we're not going to conjugate drink. So, when Frank lived in New York, he would often drink coffee with his family in the morning. I'll repeat. When Frank lived in New York City, he would often drink coffee with his family in the morning. Now, this is not an event that happened one time. Frank would drink coffee with his family frequently, or maybe every day. I don't know when he lived in New York. He doesn't live in New York now. That's what we understand by this. Frank does not live in New York now. Now, maybe he still drinks coffee with his family, but it's not exactly the same situation because he doesn't do this in New York anymore. Maybe he lives in Brazil, maybe he lives in Chicago, maybe he lives in Thailand. But when he lived in New York, he would drink coffee with his family every morning. This is what we call nostalgia. It's a kind of a happy memory. This is the reason to use would. I'll give you another example. So, this is Alice. In this picture, she's a teenager. But now, let's pretend that Alice is a grown woman of 40 years old. She still stays in touch with her friend, okay? But it's not exactly the same situation as when they were teenagers and when they studied together. When Alice was a teenager, she would speak to her friend every morning on the telephone before school. Now, once again, maybe Alice still speaks to her friend on the telephone, but it's not the same situation. She's not a teenager anymore. Maybe they don't study together anymore, and maybe they don't speak together on the phone every morning before school. Maybe they just speak to each other sometimes. So this is a repeated activity that happened in the past with would. But it shows, once again, a kind of nostalgia. Something that she has happy memories thinking about. Okay? So, once again, she spoke to her friend yesterday, one event in the past. When she was a teenager, she would speak to her friend every morning before school. A repeated event in the past, no connection with now, and a kind of a happy memory or a kind of a nostalgic memory. Okay? So this is another way for you to use would, and it'll make you sound like a native speaker because we use it a lot. Hope these videos were helpful to you. We have lots of more great videos for you every week. Please remember to like and subscribe and ring the bell to receive notification. See you there.